Welcome to Blooming Dandelion, where we explore healing, growing, and evolving to live a balanced and fulfilling life. I'm your host, Andrea Rivera Casul, and each week we'll dive into practical tips, inspiring stories, and expert advice to help you bloom. Let's get started. Hello, Dandelion. Welcome back to another episode of Blooming Dandelion. I am your host, Andrea Rivera Casul, but you can call me Andy. Welcome back to our channel. I'm so glad that you're here. This is going to be a deep subject. And again, I want to thank everyone that has listened to all 5 episodes that are live on all streaming platforms. It is your support that makes me want to continue doing this. Even if it is one person that is motivated to listen to this, I know that I'm making a difference. And I'm just so grateful to be here and to be able to share my experiences. Once we get guests involved, you'll get to know more people around in the community, abroad, whatever may be, wherever they come from. I am just really excited to continue growing and developing this community because it's a passion of mine. And I know what it's like to be isolated and alone. And last week we covered some really great self-care meditation. It's one of those things that you can go back and listen to it whenever you're feeling stressed. We're going to continue doing these self-guided meditations because they're helpful, and we are always stressed or always tired, and it's beneficial for us to be able to take some time, get focused, be able to just concentrate on a certain thing as opposed to having so many ideas flutter in our heads. Without further ado, let's get into the bloomin' soil. Y'all, it has been a week this week. Let me tell y'all. I'm going to start with my soil because my soil has to do with my health. My soil has been, yes, I am a little bit better from my shoulder injury, but my soil is that I had a 23-hour migraine. A 23-hour migraine. Now, if you have never been affected by a migraine before, you're blessed. You are entirely blessed. You are God's favorite. You are whoever you believe in's favorite, because how dare you have never experienced a migraine? Migraines are debilitating. They're the epitome of hell on earth because literally you feel like you cannot do absolutely anything. And I was stuck with this migraine during report season at my job. It was insane. It was so insane. I had to finish what I was doing, literally plop down in bed in utter darkness with ice packs. I was dying. I was so exhausted. Exhaustion wasn't even the right word at this point, but after 23 hours, I was able to get up, go to the gym, be able to focus on those things, and then be able to just continue with my day, thankfully, because my pills did not work. That was a migraine that just came out of the blue and did not want to let go. So that's my soil. I apologize. It's not a very big soil that we can grow from, but it was a soil that affected me this week. So that is my soil. Okay, so sorry. My bloom this week. My bloom this week has to be that I have been able to go on live a little bit more and talk to folks. I've been able to connect with more people, and that always invigorates my spirit and really just feeds into the things that I'm passionate in, and that's always building community, building trust with folks, and it's something that I really truly love. And being able to build community surrounding things that I'm passionate around, which one of those passions is makeup. I was able to do a live and just explain a little bit more about what makeup is, what it means to me, how I got involved in it, and truly like what things to use for someone that is possibly not familiar with makeup. Shout out, because I know that you're gonna listen to this episode. Shout out to you. You know who you are, and I know you're gonna text me when you hear this episode. I'm sending you so much love, because that was one of my highlights this week. I really do love doing this stuff. It really makes me It makes me feel like I'm doing the right steps, even if it is just doing a live and talking about makeup. It's about building community, and it's about building friendships around things that we like or that we're interested in. And so it's just a bloom that I think has always been something that like attracts my attention, something that I love to do. And so I love that that's my bloom this week, and I'm really, really happy about that. So we've finished our Bloom in Soil. And again, if you are just starting to hear our podcast, or my podcast, but our podcast, because this is a community effort. This is all about us as dandelions. If you are just tuning in and you don't know what Bloom in Soil is, it's kind of like rose and rosebuds, or a high and low of the week. But we call it a bloom in soil because our soil is something that is fertile, that even though it's a bad thing, we're going to change the narrative. And that bad thing just was an obstacle to make sure that we bloom later on in the week. So we try to change how we see the outlook of things, because a lot of times we have a negative outlook on things. So might as well change the name, change the narrative, and make sure that it fits into your story. So Bloom in Soil it is. Alrighty, so the topic for today, I'm sending a huge trigger warning if you are uncomfortable with sensitive topics, such as domestic violence, such as abuse. This is your trigger warning that this is going to be a sensitive topic. So if you are listening out loud, or listening with folks, or listening at your lunch break and you don't want to listen to a sensitive topic right now, save this podcast for later when you are by yourself, when you are with somebody that you can rely on, and come back to it. So I am a domestic violence survivor, and I am heavy on the advocacy on talking about my experience so that it can resonate with somebody else. They can hear my story and see that they're not alone. I think it's really important that we as survivors be able to share a story. And there are survivors that may never be able to, depending on the level of trauma that they've survived. And it's okay. It's okay to not want to share your story. I am just one of those people that thankfully, I'm very resilient, and I'm very strong and can tell my story, and I'm okay to do that. So please don't expect that other survivors have to. They don't have to. They don't owe you to tell their stories. So if you are around someone that has survived, or you're seeing whatever I'm going to discuss today, don't force anyone to disclose if they are a survivor or if they have been abused. You just don't know where they're at in their level of healing. You also don't know where they're at with their abuser. And so it's just really important to know those things. So we're going to talk about the relationship of abuse, or understanding relationship abuse, because I think that a lot of people don't necessarily understand what abuse looks like in a relationship, or how it can come up. And sometimes the narrative is, why doesn't that person leave? Like, it's so obvious, and like, why don't they get out? And so I really want to make sure that we talk about this topic. All of my information is from thehotline.org. If you are looking to get more information, thehotline.org has amazing resources. It also has a hotline number that you can call, which is 1-800-799-SAFE, which is 7233. Again, that hotline number is 1-800-799-7233. And then they also have a chat live feature, or they also have a text response. So again, if you are in an unsafe place, make sure that you know what tool to use, but this is a great website for you as a survivor or someone who might be going through these things, or if you're a loved one and you're just trying to figure out how to phrase things or how to get educated to support a loved member or a member of the family, or your child or your niece, whoever. I think it's really important to have tools in handy and bring in anyone or an expert that could help you when navigating this conversation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how abuse is defined, and then we can go a little bit more in depth after that. So, abuse is defined as domestic violence, which is also referred to as intimate partner violence, or IPV if you ever see it written like that, dating abuse or relationship abuse. All of those things would be categorized as domestic violence. It's a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to maintain power and control over another partner in an intimate relationship. Domestic violence doesn't discriminate. People of any race, age, gender, sexuality, religion, education level, or economic status can be a victim or perpetrator of domestic violence. That includes behaviors that physically harm, intimidate, manipulate, or control a partner, or otherwise use force to behave in ways they don't want to. This can happen through physical violence, threats, emotional abuse, or financial control, or even all of those combined. To understand relationship abuse types, there are multiple forms of abuse, and they're usually present at the same time in abusive situations. And it's essential to understand how these behaviors interact so you know what to look for. So I'm going to talk a little bit about recognizing abuse signs or the warning signs of abuse. To understand, abusive behaviors in a partner, you have to understand that you never go into a relationship expecting someone to be abusive. That's number one. So if you are suspecting that your loved one or someone that you know might be in an abusive pattern, they never knew from the jump. They might have never suspected it, because there is a cycle of abuse that exists. So I'm going to get into that cycle of abuse after I talk a little bit about what those behaviors might entail. So common signs of abusive behavior in a partner include telling you that you never do anything right, showing extreme jealousy of your friends or time spent away from them, preventing or discouraging you from spending time with others, particularly friends, family members, or peers, insulting, demeaning, or shaming you, especially in front of other people, preventing you from making your own decisions, including about working or attending school, controlling finances in the household without discussion, such as taking out your money or refusing to provide money for necessary expenses, pressuring you to have sex or perform sexual acts you're not comfortable with, pressuring you to use drugs or alcohol, intimidating you through threatening looks or actions, insulting your parenting or threatening to harm or take away your children or pets, intimidating you with weapons like guns, knives, bats, or mace, destroying your belongings or your home. So these are just an overview of some of the patterns that you could see in an abusive relationship. This is not everything, okay? I want you to know that there could be extra levels of what could be done or what red flags could come out. And so I just want you to know that this is just an overview statement of what could possibly come out of. So I want to say there are some red flags to look out if you're wondering if your partner or relationship is too good to be true. So seeing like my partner wouldn't take no for an answer. In movies, we often see romantic storylines where someone is turned down for a date but continues to pursue, even harass them to the object of their affection until they agree to go out. This is not only unrealistic, it's also unhealthy and disrespectful because it is not consenting and it's stalking. It's considered stalking. And so if they don't allow you to have your own boundaries, that's a red flag, okay? That is a major red flag. My partner showers me with compliments, aka love bombing. it's really nice to hear how much your partner loves you and that they care about you and all that stuff. But this is also a tactic to let your guard down. So you have to be very careful with how they're love bombing you because a lot of times when they do that, something else is going to come your way. My partner bought me a lot of presents or very expensive gifts right away. So getting and receiving gifts can be really nice, especially if the people in the relationship have different levels of access to the money, but gifts can cause a lot of anxiety. So your partner ought to respect your boundaries. Again, boundaries are so important. So both around the value and type of gifts you feel comfortable giving and receiving in your relationship is really important around those boundaries. If you can't reciprocate expensive gifts or the gifts to the level of that they're giving you, that's also a part of like the anxiety that you may get from receiving those things. So it might be important to tell your partner to slow down. That's a red flag, but it's a cautious red flag, right? Not all the time is it bad to get gifts, but if it's something happening continuously and you have to, you have anxiety around that, watch that. Your anxiety is telling you something. My partner acts differently around me than everyone else. It's definitely normal to see a different side of your partner as you grow to better know and trust yourselves in the relationship. However, if you realize that your partner is putting on a front for everyone except for you, then that's a major red flag. So that's really important. One helpful way to keep facts straight to yourself is to use a journal. Make sure that it's a safe and a journal that you can put in a place that is safe for yourself, that's not exposing you. I think that it's very scary sometimes when we are looking for outlets that our abusive partners might take away from us. And I just want to make sure that you are protecting yourself at all costs, no matter what. My partner is jealous of other people I spend time with. We've already broken down the jealousy myths, but we still hear a lot of people who think that if their partner isn't jealous, that means they don't love them. That is not true. While jealousy is a perfectly normal emotion, it's crucial to cope with feelings of jealousy in healthy ways. The fact is, it's important for everyone to have friends of all genders and to have a life outside of their romantic relationship. Okay? If they try to control or limit who you talk to or spend time with outside of the relationship, that crosses the line into abuse. That is important. Every time you have to be cautious because that is a major red flag, okay? There's nothing wrong with having friends from different genders and talking about life and all that stuff as long as you're not crossing a boundary, okay? And a lot of times I've seen and I have experienced jealousy from family members. So that's also something to be cautious about. I want to get into another part of, identifying abuse because I think it's really important to understand what could be abuse and cultural context because domestic violence can look very different for different people. So domestic violence can affect anyone, but the ways in which it affects or appears may manifest, oh my goodness, I cannot speak. But the ways in which it appears may manifest itself or be received differently depending on the setting in which it occurs. Cultural context can play a large role in a survivor's decision to leave an abusive relationship. The specific cultural setting may be determined by your race, gender, sexuality, class, education, or any number of factors, okay? Abuse is never okay. And I want you to know that it impacts every community differently. And we're gonna talk about how it impacts culturally in another episode, but I just wanted to at least flag that so that you understand as well that sometimes whenever that like inkling that I told y'all earlier, right, that you're like, oh, why don't they leave? Why don't they this? There's a level of differences between like relationships, right? When we have seen in Hispanic culture, Latinx culture, there is still a very much prevalent patriarchal society. And even in our society here in the United States, but in the Latin countries, it's still very much heavily patriarchal. And so if you are talking to a woman who possibly has a role of caretaker at home, who doesn't have a job, who doesn't have any monetary, financial ways to escape, that's a sign that like they possibly are going to need more help than other folks that might have access, that might have family, right? There are a lot of communities that still don't believe in divorce, and they'll always fault women or fault men, whoever the person who is being subjected to that abuse. So I want that to be clear, because it's really important to understand that, and to have empathy towards people. All right, so I have highlighted some ways to identify abuse. I have highlighted a little bit about some red flags. I want to talk a little bit about my experience, and how it started, and how we got to the place that we were at. Because again, I think it's important to note that I did not know that my partner was abusive. I did not know that, we would ever get to the point that we got. It literally was something that I thought would never touch me per se. I think that it's literally something that's sometimes like we never think that it will affect us, right? That's the biggest thing, is that we always think that, oh, it's not going to happen to me. That's okay. That's all right. Whatever. And that's not how it should be. That's not how we should think about it, because it could truly, truly happen at any point. So before I even get into my situation, I want to talk about the cycle of abuse that I told y'all. So the cycle of abuse looks like a circle, and it looks like an ongoing, thing that happens all the time, because it's a circle. And so it starts off with one, the tension builds. So the abuser creates tension and the survivor stress builds. So obviously if someone is trying to interact with me in a negative way, I'm going to start getting anxious, stressed, and I don't know how to react, but they'll escalate. So that's the incident. We'll go into the incident. The abuser lashes out through physical, verbal, psychological, or sexual abuse tactics to dominate the survivor. You have that incident. What happens after the incident? Sometimes you recoil, and so you separate. So then the reconciliation happens. The abuser makes excuses. They start to say like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Oh, you pushed me to do that. Oh, this, that. They have excuses. But the reconciliation happens because there's love. And then after that, the calm, which I call the honeymoon, which everyone calls the honeymoon stage, because everything is okay. Everything is beautiful. You go on dates, you go on vacations, everything is fine. And then the cycle starts again. It's as if you literally are on a roller coaster that never gets done. And I think back to my time, and I say this, I talked to my mom about this, I have talked to friends, and I used to talk about this more really once I got out of the relationship, but truly, like, I sat for a good while and I was like, I'm looking back at every time, and this was abusive since the start, but I never saw it. I came into the relationship with my confidence at an all-time low. I had a really low self-esteem. I truly felt like, because I didn't have my self-love at the level that I'm at now, I came into college and I was just like, no one's ever gonna love me. I am too big, too fat, not beautiful. That was just like everything that went in my mind. And I was just like, whoever loves me will be the only person that loves me. That is what I thought. Which I want to hold my 18-year-old self and hug her and tell her and show her what life is now. But that is what I walked into. And so, gosh, we're gonna get emotional again. And so I started off the first couple of months, not being in a relationship, navigating friendships, and all of a sudden I really lost my network of friendships. I was left with one friend, and I then got into that relationship. In that first month, I was told I was nothing. I was called out of my name. I was so many things in that first month. I was isolated. I was ignored. The cycle of abuse just occurred in that first month. And what's crazy is that when I walked around campus, I was fed the idea of like, oh my gosh, you're changing him. Oh my gosh, he's so nice now. Oh my gosh. And I felt like, oh my God, I'm healing him. Which, ladies, gentlemen, gentle theys, folks, if you think you are a rehab center for a person, let me be the first person to tell you that you need to take several seats and go to therapy. Because there's nothing that we can do to fix anyone. Nothing. A person needs to fix themselves, and a person needs to find their own self-love within themselves. And if they can't heal those things, they're not for you. You are not meant to heal anyone, and you are not meant to fix anyone. That is number one. Okay? Number two that I learned through therapy is that you are nobody's better half or other half. Okay? It's cute to say it and all that stuff, and I always would love to say it, but let me tell you something. When my therapist told me that, it released the shackles of relationships upon me, because it allowed me to see that, oh, hey, I actually don't need to say that they're my better half or anything, because Andrea is a whole person. I am not missing anything. I am not missing a heart. I'm not missing a liver. I'm not missing anything in my body that will complete me with another human at all. You are a whole person with different abilities, with different senses. You are whole, okay? And you should love yourself the way that you are. So I will say that. Through the first year, it was tumultuous. My family found out that I was in a relationship through Thanksgiving time. And they obviously had never met him until my mom came up for a play that I was in at the campus. And I was very nervous for them meeting, especially since my family is Puerto Rican Dominican. His was African American, Black, and we're very different. We were very different in what we grew up with. We were very different home lives. We were very different in every sense of the word. And I mean every sense. I mean, the first month of us getting to know each other, the person told me that they never wanted to get married. And I was like, I'm gonna change that about you. There's a lot that I could unpack. There is a lot that I still go back in time and go through my memories, and I sometimes forget about. I forget that they happen. And maybe that's the trauma response that is trying to keep me safe from remembering so much. But truly, I think there is a point where we, as survivors, need to see that our past doesn't define the future, and that we can go and put in the work to heal the wounds. Because a lot of times, unfortunately, when you have survived, a lot of times you become a perpetrator because you haven't healed and you're angry and hurt and you need to make another person pay. And I'm here to tell you, if you are someone that's hurting, if you are someone who is trying to get out, there are resources around you. I worked at a DV agency, and I think it was truly life-changing as a survivor to hear the stories and the calls that would come in on the hotline. There is a sense of sisterhood and camaraderie, brotherhood, whatever you want to call it, because again, abuse can happen to any gender, and it can happen to anyone. Truly, it is literally something that it doesn't handpick, it just happens. But I think that there's a level of comfort or a level of trust that a fellow survivor can have when helping out, because we have a different sense of empathy to understand what we've gone through. And I think that a lot of folks that have never gone through anything traumatic, or that have never gone through, situations like this, might not be the best suited. I'm not saying that they're not. I think that there's a lot of people that should do the work and do the work amazingly. But I'm just saying that I think that there is a level of difference, of partnership that can help bridge whenever, someone is trying to talk through a hotline about their survivor experience. So yeah, I think that that's just something that I wanted to note. But I think as a 31-year-old woman now, and looking back at my 18-year-old self, and my 18-year-old self was in that relationship for 7.5 years. So I was about 25 when I got married. I look back and I'm sad for that version of that girl, because I know that my parents raised a strong woman, and I know that I left my home of Puerto Rico and went all the way to college so that I could become more independent. But I think that isolation from my normalcy, which was my family, my normal routines, and all of that, it fed into my abuse. It definitely, and at a later episode, I'll talk more about the thicker part of the abuse and all that, but truly isolation is the worst thing that could happen for me and for many survivors. Many abusers take that as a sign to continue the abuse secretly, and to control who they get to talk to, who they disseminate the information to. Again, the isolation was so much that I didn't have access to a phone. I only had access to a phone on Wi-Fi because I was going through financial abuse as well with that person, upon, physical and sexual abuse, and it was very layered. And I think the biggest thing from seeing the warning signs and seeing the patterns and being able to identify it after everything, it really took time to identify everything. I will say that, because the cycle of abuse continues, and it can continue for so long. In an interview that I had done previously, the person that interviewed me reminded me that it takes a survivor, or, a person that has been abused, at least 7 tries to get out of the relationship. So I want you to have empathy and understand where a person may be coming from. And everyone's life is so different. I was very fortunate that I didn't have things attached to this person. I didn't have children with this person. I didn't have so many different things. And even though there are days that I think back and I am saddened by the things that got taken away from me, because I think that there is a level of survivor's guilt that we experience, that we talk about, that we think about, that we might ponder on a lot of times and just sit with that discomfort sometimes. And that'll be something that we talk along the other side of things. I won't discuss that now. But I think it's important to know that it's a normal part of healing to have remorse, to have guilt, to have all of the feelings. I think it's important to feel them. To have anger, I still feel anger sometimes, even though I say that I'm fully healed. I don't know that I'll ever be fully healed, because I think that there'll always be some kind of trigger, but it is my job to, whenever I feel those things, to give it the space that it needs, write it down and honor it, and also not have to put an excuse as to why I'm feeling these things. It was a long time going through that, and it takes a long time to heal. And I think, I know that I'm gonna be okay. I know that any survivor that gets out, that has support, that wants support, I know that they'll be okay. There is a better tomorrow. But if you are feeling any type of way, just know that it's okay to feel it. That it's okay to cry, to be angry. I think I mostly get angry, and I think that's part of my grief from losing my grandfather. But I think there's a sense of mortality now that hits a little bit stronger as we age. And I was very blessed that during my wedding I had all four of my grandparents. And I think it was a conversation that I had a lot with my mom, but I was angry a lot with the fact that I lost my father-daughter dance to that memory, or that the last time that I had a grandfather dance with my grandfather that has now passed was at my wedding. And so it's hard to navigate those feelings. It's hard to allow yourself to feel that way, but I think it's important to say it, to, say that it's going to be okay, and that there's more to life and more to creating new memories than to just focus on what was already created. And I think it's normal. Like I said, I think it's totally normal. And I think that if you are someone that has a person in your life that has survived, please, please, please don't just tell them or push them away by saying like, oh, that happened so many years ago. That happened. Trauma comes in weird ways and comes up in weird ways. I can tell you that for a certainty. And trauma will come up and it will start feeling like it happened yesterday. Like it happened yesterday. So I just want you to know that if you have never been abused, if you've never gone through something traumatic, I think that that's amazing. I think that that's how it should be all the time. But so many people are abused. So many people are survivors.
And we just need a little bit more understanding when it comes to how we speak to one another and understanding why things come up and show up the way that they show up. But I know that this has been a very heavy conversation. It has been a heavy podcast episode. And this is now the second episode that you guys see me cry. I'm sorry. But I feel things, and I feel things very deeply. So you're going to see me cry a lot throughout this podcast show. We'll see. But I'm going to continue to be a voice for those who are voiceless. Again, because that survivor's guilt of me being able to get out when a lot of people don't survive. I feel like I owe it to a lot of folks that aren't here anymore for me to stand up and talk on behalf of them and continue educating and sharing my voice, sharing my story, and to let folks know that I'm no longer afraid of the person who I was with, and that no matter what, I am going to stand up for and with survivors all the time. So I love y'all so much. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode, even though if it was a heavy one. We have to be okay with submerging ourselves into some form of education sometimes, and sometimes education can be uncomfortable and it can bring discomfort. So I thank you all for listening and tuning in. We launch every Sunday, and I hope that you stay with us, because I think we're a pretty cool community and we're slowly growing. And if you're just starting to watch, you're one of the first dandelions. So just know that I love you, and that you matter, that you're important, and that you are worthy of love and respect, and love that is not with conditions, love that does not hurt, love that is free of abuse. I love y'all. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Blooming Dandelion. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Follow us on social media on Instagram at Blooming Dandelion Podcast for more inspiration. And remember to keep on blooming. See you next time, dandelions.